Joining us now on our instant series, both preview and reaction series, episode number 24, is our good friend from UConn and UConn men's basketball beat reporter for Hearst Connecticut Media and CTinsider.com, Dave Borges. Dave, how are things up in Connecticut?
Things are good. Nice, warmish day today in Connecticut, and UConn fans are just completely rational and not panicking at all about their team that's now lost 4 of the last 5 games.
It's honestly unbelievable to see, especially Sunday too, how down here on Long Island and hearing about, and not only hearing about it, but seeing all over UConn Twitter, seeing all over St. John's Twitter, how everything had all came about up at the XL Center on Sunday. And we spoke just a few moments ago off camera, and you had said too, they've lost 4 out of their last 5. And it's crazy. They're 4-4 in the Big East. And, all of a sudden, Dave, it almost looks like that, they're a shell in and itself. It's really crazy. What do you see that's gone on?
It's really, I didn't see this coming. I mean, now conversely, I didn't really see them jumping out to a 14-0 start this year with every victory in double figures and, really kind of trucking Alabama and a neutral floor. Good Iowa State team. They certainly surpassed expectations to start the season, but since then they really haven't played well. When you think about it, if they lose to St. John's, they're going to be under 500 in the Big East. St. John's will be, I'm sorry, Seton Hall, I should say. If Seton Hall wins on Wednesday night, they will be ahead of them in UConn in the Big East standings, and UConn will be under 500. So it's just hard to believe when a few weeks ago people were somewhat seriously thinking that they could go undefeated. I don't think anyone really believed that, but you heard that here and there.
Yeah.
I don't know what's it's really hard to pinpoint. The bottom line is the defensive play has just been abysmal. You saw it against St. John's. St. John's consistently driving to the lane for layups or getting fouled, beating UConn's guards out on the perimeter. That's the main thing, really. But it also doesn't help that the shots aren't falling. So it's kind of a lot of different things going on right now.
It's really nuts to see, especially when you win your first 14 games, then you lose 4 out of your next 5, and especially against, there's obviously the team Xavier, Providence, Marquette. They're expected to win, but they're expected to be really tough games, and which they were. But the St. John's game, no one saw coming. Mike, debut that new microphone you got over there.
Yeah, I think even for St. John's fans, I think it was quite shocking to go up there and wind up winning in the fashion that they did. From the UConn perspective, I think Jordan Hawkins was probably a bright spot, but Dave, I think really the guard play around Hawkins has been consistent all year, but you're seeing a lot of struggles with the guard play, especially offensively, and getting some other help. I think really offensively for UConn, a lot's coming from the front court.
Yeah, they don't really have a point guard. They brought Tristan Newton in, a kid who scored 17.7 a game last year at ECU, which obviously isn't a very particularly good team in a lesser conference. So he never really has experienced sort of the rigors of Big East play. And he's really a scoring guard. He's 6'4" kid, but he's not a natural point guard. He's had some big games this year, but lately he's been really slumping and hasn't, had a terrible game against St. John's. A couple of 3 other transfers they brought in, all backcourt guys, had all really contributed pretty well throughout the first 14 games. Joey Calcaterra, a kid from San Diego, he was like around 55, 57% on threes through the first 10 or 11 games this season. It was ridiculous. Now, he wasn't going to keep that up, but he's really taken a downturn in Big East play. And then a couple of kids, Naheem Aline, transfer from Virginia Tech, really has been kind of silent for the last couple of weeks. And Hassan Diarra, a New York City kid, transferring from Texas A&M. His brother's is one of the coaches on the team, assistant coach. He's a little bit more of a point guard, but he's pretty good defensively, but just doesn't give you much offensively. So, overall, the guards just are not contributing for UConn right now, and that's a big problem.
Just to follow up on that point, Dave, I read an article from you a couple of days ago. I think it was Thursday, 5 days ago, And is UConn men's basketball better suited for games outside of physical Big East play? And I love that article that you had written there. And one of the quotes that Danny Hurley had said here was that really caught my eye. We're proving to be better suited for maybe those other types of games. It makes me feel better for March. Now, my question to you is that after reading that and seeing this, um, you know, it kind of is a little bit scary because when you're here, you kind of make, the meat and bone or the meat and potatoes of the schedule is in the Big East, and that's where you make, you kind of build that tournament resume. Is this a sign to come if they can't get things together, they can't figure things out, that kind of an at-large bid is kind of in the rearview mirror?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to believe that would be the case, but in general, I understood what Dan was saying there.
Yeah.
Certainly, you watch them play freely against teams like Alabama, Oklahoma State, Iowa State, at Florida. They just, everything flowed a lot. It wasn't the sort of the slog of the Big East that can kind of bog you down a little bit. And so I understand what he's saying. He's saying the Big East refs let you play a little more. It's dangerous to start bringing up March when you're still in January and when you've lost a few games in a row. It just doesn't look good. And what Dan said, it does come across a little bit as excuse making. It sounds like, again, I understand his point, but the flip side is you can't really, Marquette is sort of a finesse team, and they beat UConn. Xavier, same thing, sort of an offensive oriented team. And UConn couldn't stop them, and they were able to beat UConn. So again, I understand what he's saying. Now, do I think they're going to really struggle? I think they're going to get it together. Certainly, their schedule in the Big East is a lot easier. They've played the top three teams already on the road. They're going to get those three teams at home in Providence, Xavier, and Marquette. And then they have sort of the weaker sisters in Georgetown, DePaul, Butler, a lot of those type of games. Seton Hall is going to be a tough battle. It's a game that you think they would win. So I think they'll straighten things out, but it's hard for me to say that they're not going to make the NCAA tournament, but certainly they have to start playing better.
Yeah. Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, you highlighted Hassan Diarra, and we mentioned, I think Danny Hurley mentioned it in the post-game press conference after the St. John's game, that there needs to be change. He alluded to shaking things up. I know you highlighted Diarra. What can he bring to this team? If he gets more minutes, is there a spark there? Is there a different dimension that he can bring?
I think spark is the word, and that's even the word that Dan used. Now, he didn't mention Diarra specifically. In fact, he was a little bit critical of him, and he didn't play a great game the other night. But he does bring some energy, some defensive energy. He turns the ball over too much. He's not a great shooter, not a great offensive player. Although he at Texas A&M, he had some big games and hit some big shots for them. So that's more speculation on my part as him being a possible guy who can provide a spark. Even a guy like Joey Calcaterra, as I mentioned before, he's here to hit threes. He hasn't been hitting them, but if he can get hot again, he could provide a spark. It's hard to say where they're going to find it, but they have to find something because, as Dan also mentioned, even the games they've won over the past few weeks, they haven't looked particularly good in some of those.
So we also obviously will be seeing Seton Hall tomorrow. Dave, you'll be there. I'll be there. And this is a pesky team that is young. And there's a lot of unknowns still with Seton Hall. And obviously Danny Hurley coming back to his home state and everything like that for now, I think, the third time now that they're back in the Big East, or the second time now in front of fans. First year obviously was during COVID. But tough. It's just a tough start for UConn here in the Big East, in Big East play. But Seton Hall is just this pesky team, unknown team. What do you see tomorrow as kind of your number one go-to that you believe Danny Hurley is going to go to kind of get things going quickly against this not only we said tough over and over again, but an unknown team.
Yeah, like you said, a tough defensive team. And UConn has just struggled. Well, they're struggling on both sides of the ball, but you got to figure UConn, obviously Seton Hall, as you know, isn't a dynamic offensive team. So could be looking at sort of a lower scoring game. I just think that I think what, they got to get the guards going, but I think UConn, like you mentioned before, the front court has really been the best aspect of their game this year. So I think you got to find a way to get Donovan Clingan, the 7'2" kid, more minutes. Whether it's pairing him with Adama Sanogo, I know Dan doesn't like that, and I know it creates some awkward sort of mismatches on both ends of the floor. But the kid's been great. He's a defensive menace, shot blocking, influencing shots, and he's very good offensively too. And Adama Sanogo is an excellent offensive player. I think you got to play. I think you got to play him more, and you got to find a guard or two who's going to step up and knock down some 3-pointers. And then you just and I hate to say this because this is one of those like sports terms, but you just got to get back to that kind of UConn toughness. You got to be tougher. Seton Hall's a tough team. Dan's questioned his own team's toughness even before the season started. So I think you want to see some kids step up and be a little tougher on Wednesday night.
Yeah, it's crazy to think also when, this team a season ago, pretty experienced team. And now really when you look at it, Dave, I was looking at the roster at full, and I remember seeing it during media day that, there's a lot of underclassmen. There's a lot of, or lowerclassmen. There's a lot of freshmen, a lot of sophomores. You brought up Clingan, another player too, Alex Caravan too. He's been pretty consistent. I think he averages about 10 points a game or something along those lines. And, they're getting contributions from, as you brought up, from their front court, but not so much the back court. And, with Seton Hall too, it's kind of the opposite, but now that front court for them is, I guess we can call it developing or finally meshing into what Shaheen Holloway has hoped that it would do by the time, I guess, February rolls around or March rolls around. But, looking now with all of this here and seeing what this Caravan kid has done, is Danny going to get any, I would say, contributions? And I guess we can start off by saying, will it come tomorrow from the upperclassmen that, putting Adama Sanogo aside as the junior, but, from any other of these upperclassmen that could potentially lead the charge, if you will, to restart this, I guess, restart their Big East season since it's 4-4.
I think Andre Jackson is a guy he wants to. He's a guy who's just pure energy, defensively. He's not a shooter. He doesn't shoot the ball well. He's not an offensive player, although he's a great athlete. He can get, and when he takes it he's going to take it to the rim more often. He's a dynamic athlete. He can drive the lane and dunk it on you. I think he's got to play. He's been foul prone lately. He's got to play a little more under control, but yet with the same energy and leadership he showed earlier this season. Maybe even a guy who could kind of handle the point for a while. He's not the greatest ball handler, but he's an excellent distributor, great passer. So that's a guy right there that I think Hurley wants to lean on. And he's been leaning on him most of the season, but Andre Jackson's a guy that's got to get going. Yeah, it's really almost everybody in truth. I mean, and that's the thing about this team is that the first 14, even 15, 16 games this year, different guys would step up each night. And now it's kind of like, they're getting maybe one or two guys with a good night, and everyone else is kind of asleep, it seems.
Yeah. It's crazy to think, just before we get to Mike, it's crazy to think that just last year, Isaiah Whaley, you also had RJ Cole too. It's crazy how it's last year already, and they have to regroup. Mike, take it away.
Yeah, we talked to, I guess you could really use the euphemism, when it rains, it pours, and that's really what's going on with UConn. And, we keep on mentioning the term spark and all. Dave, for tomorrow night, is it really changes in the starting lineup? If you had to pick, would there be any changes in the starting lineup, or is it just distributing the minutes differently?
Yeah, one of those two, maybe both. they lost those 3 straight home game or road games, 3 very good teams. I don't think it was necessary to panic too much. You lose at home to St. John's, with all due respect. I know they've been playing better. It's time to switch things up a little bit. I don't know if starting a Diarra or maybe even a Calcaterra at point over Newton, maybe that kickstart something. Maybe you go with the Klingon, Sinogo, double big man thing. It's hard to say. I think ultimately, like I said before, Klingon's got to play more minutes. They've got to find a spark. Andre Jackson's got to play better, and they've got to find somebody to kind of ignite the backcourt. And a guy like Diarra or Calcaterra could be candidates to do that. But the other thing too is you could even just say, like, he's got to stick with his guys and maybe motivate Tristan Newton to play better Wednesday night. One other quick thing too to remember is that Samson Johnson, a 6'11" athlete who's a rim protector, he can knock down 3. He's on the verge of coming back, we believe. I don't think he'll play Wednesday night. He just started live practices about less than a week ago. And they certainly aren't, even though they need him, they're not going to rush him. But when he does come back, that's going to help them a lot too. Even if he's not terribly productive, he'll be able to spell Caravan some minutes. Caravan leads a team in minutes played, and that's, as a freshman, that's not really what you want. And he's going to help out defensively as well, which is something we need. So, but I don't think that'll be tomorrow night. But that's something to look forward to for UConn fans in the probably the near future.
Definitely something to watch there. Mike, do you have any more?
Yeah, also just I know we talked about 3 of these last 5 games, they're against great teams in the Big East, top half and whatnot, but we've seen a lot of issues with UConn and falling in the second half. Really, they're either right there at halftime or they're carrying a lead and they wind up falling in the game. The exception being, of course, Creighton. Is there an issue of fatigue, or is it just better adjustments and the X's and O's of game planning, or is there something more in there for UConn?
Yeah, it's hard to say. It seems like this team plays in spurts. They have really earlier in the season, just about the entire 40 minutes were good spurts, and now you'll see flashes of it again, but then they'll revert back to just not playing very good defensively. Or I think what it comes down to too is making some shots. You start hitting some of these guys got to get a little, got to heat up a little bit at some point, you think. And that happens, then the confidence becomes contagious. I think even the defense gets better, it just, to see shots go through the net could really mean, I know it sounds kind of a simple answer, but if and when that happens, you got to believe at some point these guys are going to start reverting back to the mean in terms of what they can do. And that happens, I think you might see sort of the whole all-around game improve from some of these guys.
Mike, let's say, you know what? Let me just jump in here, just because I think this is it's a question that I'll be honest with you, Dave, tough to ask, but it's serious. It's a question that has to be asked. Was it a fluke? Was the start a fluke for UConn? And is it, what was, what do you think it was?
It's hard to say a fluke. I mean, 14 games, and certainly there were a good bunch of cupcakes in there, but you're talking about winning the PK 85, beating. Look at Alabama now. I mean, Alabama's arguably one of maybe the best team in the country, certainly one of the top 3 or 4. They beat them by 15 points, and it was never an issue. And Nate Oates after the game was talking about how UConn looks like a national championship team. National championship, not just Big East championship. Mike Boynton of Oklahoma State said the same thing. UConn beat them by 10 at home. They go on the road to beat a Florida team that's not great, but still road win, 20-point win. Yep. I don't know. Is that a fluke? I mean, they just had it going so well, and again, we talk regress to the mean. Sure, it was probably not going to last as well as it was during those 14 games, but no one could have predicted it to kind of come thundering down like this.
Yeah, absolutely. Mike, take us home.
Yeah, so last 2 for me, really. So, Dave, if UConn were to win tomorrow night's game, what is really the key matchup key battle that you're looking out for that they have to really try and come out on top of to ultimately win the game?
Yeah, Kadari Richmond killed them last year in an overtime win. I think at one point he scored like 17 straight points. I think he ended up with might have been a career high scoring day that game. I know he hasn't really put up huge numbers this year, if I'm not mistaken, but obviously
He started off very slow. Yeah.
Yeah, the way UConn has guarded or not guarded on the perimeter and in the backcourt over the past couple of weeks, certainly stopping Richmond would be big. But again, I think it comes down. I would say that I would look for a big game from Adama Sanogo and/or Donovan Clingan, and maybe the two of them sharing the floor, or at least tag teaming to have a big game for the Huskies, because Seton Hall doesn't have a huge amount of size, right? I mean, certainly the big guy is gone now, so that might be a place where an area where UConn could certainly dominate.
Yeah, and last thing also, I mean, just to put you on the spot now, you alluded to before that this Seton Hall tough defensive team. This could be a low scoring game. What's your prediction? Does this UConn slide sort of continue, or do they start sort of getting out of the hole that they built themselves for the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, I think that I think UConn is going to come out with a victory Wednesday night. I think that again, what was Sunday rock bottom, losing at home to St. John's. For them, for UConn fans, you'd hope so. I think that UConn's played Seton Hall pretty well. They won there 2 years ago at the Rock. They lost in overtime last year. Seton Hall doesn't have a lot of firepower. I think that UConn snaps out of the schneid, and if they do, then they're looking at a pretty favorable schedule over the next couple of weeks. So, maybe that's in the back of their minds. So maybe I think they've just got to kind of hunker down and realize that they've got to snap out of this and maybe go back and regain their swagger, because they had a lot of swagger for a while there. And I think maybe a win tomorrow night on the road against a pretty good team could reignite that.
Yeah, you look at their record also. 15-4, 4-4 is the record for UConn heading into the contest tomorrow. And then also just by looking at the rest of the Big East, or rather just Seton Hall, they're 11-8, also 4-4 in the conference. So there's a lot going for both teams tomorrow. I'm pumped to see what goes on because, you brought up too, they don't have really a big man up front. Seton Hall, that is, and their lone big man, Alexis Yetna, is out indefinitely with a knee injury. And there's a lot of rumblings that we may not see him again this year, and that would be crucial for Shaheen Holloway and company. So, ladies and gentlemen, Dave Borges, UConn men's basketball beat writer for Hearst Connecticut Media and ConnecticutInsider.com. Dave, thank you so much, and I'll see you tomorrow. Should be tons of fun.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Good talking to you. It should be fun tomorrow night.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we will be back tomorrow night as we'll be getting ready for Seton Hall and Marquette with our good friend Ben Steele from Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. Back in a few moments right here on the Eastern Observer.